Okay. Tonight's class, welcome everybody. Good evening. Tonight's class, we're going to talk about some very basic practical halachas of Purim, and then we're going to discuss Purim from a Chassidic perspective, and it is an extremely Chassidic holiday, Purim, and there's a lot of basic concepts of Chassidus revealed in the Yom Kippur of Purim. Okay, number one, tomorrow is a fast day, as everybody knows, which begins, in California, in LA, it begins 5:12 a.m. Wherever you are, it's 72 minutes before sunrise. If you're planning to get up and eat, then you have to have in mind before going to sleep that you're going to get up and eat. Tomorrow afternoon before Mincha, the custom is to give machzis a shekel. Chabad custom is that we give for women and kids also. So therefore, it's a whole lot, but again, our custom is that we give for women and kids. Once you start giving for them, you have to continue giving every year. And you put in $1.50, you take out three $half-a-dollar coins. They must be $half-a-dollar coins. They don't have to be halachically, they do not have to be silver. They just have to be a $half-a-dollar coin. You can give 2 quarters. It has to be a $half-a-dollar coin. That's given before Mincha. If it's Yan give it before Mincha, our custom is to give it, put him in the morning by Megillah reading, or after Megillah reading, before Megillah, it doesn't matter. Okay, now, during the Purim davening, we add Alanisim in the Shemona Esrei, in the Amida. The halacha is, if you leave it out, if you forgot it, you do not have to repeat the Shemona Esrei. You just continue going. You don't have to repeat the Shemona Esrei. Now, as far as Megillah reading, talking about the halacha of Megillah reading, men and women are equally obligated to listen to the entire Megillah. If you missed one word, you did not fulfill your obligation. You have to hear it again. So it's very important that you go to a minyan where you're going to be able to hear the reading of the Megillah. You have to follow from a text. If you follow from a text that's not a kosher Megillah, you do not read along with the reader. You just follow. You do not read along. You have a kosher Megillah and you know how to read the words, so then you could read along with the Balkari, with the one reading it. But if you have a printed Megillah, you do not read along together with the Balkari. Now, what happens if you're listening to the Megillah and all of a sudden there's a noise and you missed a few words? So the halacha is you say from the printed text, you say the words that you missed, but you have to catch up in the printed text to where the reader is, because the Megillah is not allowed to be read out of sequence. And if you're going to read a word and the guy read a later word, so you're reading this word after the later word, so you're not, again, fulfilling your obligation. So if you miss a word by the Haman banging or by whatever it is, the din is right away you catch up in the printed text, but you catch up all the way to where the Balkari is, and then you'll stop reading it and then you continue listening to him. The same applies to the Megillah reading at night and the Megillah reading during the day. A woman is obligated, men and women are obligated to hear the Megillah twice. In certain respects, Halacha says the day Megillah reading is even more important than the night reading. But you need to be able to listen to the entire Megillah, both the night of Purim and the day of Purim. You could do it any time at night, from nightfall to dawn, and you could do it any time of the day, from dawn, or preferably sunrise, to sundown. But you have to hear the Megillah twice, once at night and once during the day. Another very important din is that Mishleach Manes, which is giving 2 edibles to one person, and Matanis Levyanim, which is 1 coin each to 2 poor people, those cannot be done at night. If you give Shalach Manes at night or Matanis Levyanim at night, you are not fulfilling your obligation. Unless if you give it to somebody at night to give it out for you the next day. That's okay. Therefore, if you have a box with matanis lavyeni, you can put money in there even at night, because you're basically making them your agent to give it out during the next day. But you cannot give shalach manis at night, or matanis lavyenim at night, or su'udas purim. The purim meal also has to be eaten during the day. You're supposed to have a little bit of a meal the night of Purim, Thursday night, it says in Halacha, but the meal, the obligation of the su'udas purim is during the day. And therefore, I want to suggest something. I know a lot of people send shalach manis through a Purim shuttle, whether the schools or whatever it is, they send shalach manis through a Purim shuttle. I don't want to get into the whole lengthy discussion. It's definitely not, you should definitely do it. It's a good fundraiser. You're giving tzedakah, it's great. But you're not actually necessarily fulfilling your obligation of giving mashleach manis through these shuttles. Number one, they don't deliver on Purim day. Many times they deliver before Purim, after Purim, at night Purim. Secondly, you have to give a certain amount halachically per person. If you have a lot of people in the shuttle and you don't have enough food for the entire gift for all the people that donated money to that particular person, it's questionable if you're Yosef. Therefore, I would strongly suggest that every person should give mishleach manis, at least 2 edibles to one person during the day of Purim. This year is Friday, to make sure you fulfill your obligation properly of giving mishleach manis. Now, mishleach manis, contrary to public conception, which is completely incorrect according to Halacha, it does not need to be 2 separate brachas. You can send mishleach manis 2 things with the same bracha. You could send an apple and a pear. You could send a drink and a piece of fish, which both would be shahako. It does not have to be 2 separate brachas. It has to be 2 separate edible foods that are ready to eat, that don't need to be cooked, baked, or whatever it is. So as long as you send 2 edible foods to one person, you fulfill your obligation of mishleach manis, and that should be done clearly by each individual, men, women, and children. And there's another issue over here. Many times the custom is families send to families. This family is giving to this family is giving back to that family. It's not so clear in Halacha if that's the 100% way of doing it. In addition to that, of families to families, it would be preferred if a man, because a man can only give to a man and a woman can only give to a woman, mishleach manis. So therefore, you give one proper mishleach manis, a man to man, woman to woman, and all the rest you can do families to families. Children, boys and girls, should be educated from the age of 6 and on to give mishleach manis to their friends, and also matanis lavyenim, which is the gifts for the poor people. Okay, that's as far as mishleach manis and matanis lavyenim go. Now this year, because Purim is on Friday, the proper time to make sudas Purim is in the morning, before midday, at least to start the Purim Su'uda before midday. If somebody didn't, they can start later, but it really should be between what's called the 10th hour. So you're talking about preferably before 3:30 according to 4. You shouldn't start the Purim Suda later, because you need to go and eat the proper Friday night's meal, which is Shabbos. So therefore, the Suda, Purim Suda preferably should be in the morning, and if not, it could be early afternoon, but you really shouldn't do it in late afternoon. Again, Alanisim is said in the benching, if you're washing, and in the davening. And Hallel, by the way, interestingly, is not said on Purim, even though on Hanukkah, Hallel is said, and Purim is also just as rabbinic as Hanukkah, because there's 3 reasons the Gemara gives. One reason is because it was a miracle that happened outside of Eretz Yisrael. Hanukkah was a miracle that happened in Israel, so therefore you say Hallel. The Gemara says Purim happened outside of Israel, so therefore we don't say Hallel. Another reason is because unlike Hanukkah, when they won the Battle of Hanukkah and they had the miracle of the menorah, they reestablished the Beis Hamikdash. They were in freedom again. They had the Beis Hamikdash. Purim, the Gemara says, "Akata avde dachashverosh shanan." We are still slaves. Dachashverosh was still in Golus. So therefore, the miracle of Purim was not a complete miracle. I'm talking from a halachic perspective, and therefore we don't say Hallel. The third reason the Gemara says why we don't say Hallel, because reading of the Megillah is actually the Hallel. So by reading Megillah, that is the actual Hallel that we say on Purim. Okay, if you have any other questions about Halacha, you can look in the Halacha newsletter, or you can consult your local competent Orthodox rabbi. What? No, it's a rabbinic mitzvah. Okay, next. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Purim, a little bit deeper, what Purim is really all about. So number one, the Arizal writes that Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippur, the Arizal writes, is Yom Kippurim. It's like Purim. That means, the Arizal writes, Purim is even greater than Yom Kippur. Because we're saying Yom Kippur is Yom Kippurim, it's like Purim, but it's not as great as Purim. And therefore we find a lot of similarities between Purim and Yom Kippur. Number one, on Purim, we know why was it called Purim. The pasuk says, "People pur hu hagaylo." Haman cast lots. That's why it's called Purim. Purim is Persian, or at least biblical Persian, for lottery, Gadol. In Hebrew, it's a Gadol. In Farsi of that time, at least, there was the word Purim, which means a lottery. On Yom Kippur, we know they cast lots. On Yom Kippur in the Beis Hamikdash, there are two identical goats, looked exactly alike. One was brought as a chatas, as a korban, and the other one was brought la'azazel, it was thrown off the cliff. How did they know which animal is which? So they cast lots. So Purim, they cast lots. Yom Kippurim, they cast lots. That's similarity number one. Similarity number two, in the whole Megillah, there is no mention of Hashem's name. There's a lot of words that allude to Hashem's name. For instance, the Medrash says, when it says the word Hamelech, it refers to Hashem. When it says Achashverosh, it says, what does Achashverosh mean? Misha Acharis Vereishis Shalai. The beginning and end is his. It refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a lot of acronyms. Yavo HaMelech V'Haman Hayom is an acronym, Yud Kei Vav Kei. So there's a lot of things alluding to Hashem's name in the Megillah, but openly, Hashem's name is not mentioned in the entire Megillah. There's a halachic reason, and then there's a Chassidic reason. Halachic reason, why is Hashem's name not mentioned in the Megillah? Because they knew it was going to be the historical book, a history book for the Persian nation, and they didn't want that if they say Hashem's name in it, the Goyim will say it means their God. So therefore, the simple halachic reason, the name of Hashem was not put into the Megillah, because they didn't want that it should be misinterpreted as a foreign God. According to that reason, the fact that Hashem's name is not mentioned in the Haggadah seemingly makes it, in the Megillah, seemingly makes it a little bit inferior. secondary. Hashem's name is not mentioned. Chassidus explained just the opposite. The reason why Hashem's name is not mentioned in the Megillah, because the story of the Megillah is above the name of Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei. It is above Yud Kei Vav Kei. And I'll explain what that means in a second. And this is another connection to Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, we discussed this when we were learning Yom Kippur, so just briefly. On Yom Kippur, the pasuk says, Ki b'yom hazeh, on this day of Yom Kippur, Yechaper aleichem, he will forgive you. It doesn't say who. He will forgive you. Mikol chatosechem, from all your averos, lifnei Hashem titaru. Before God, you will be purified. So the pasuk says, on this day of Yom Kippur, he, whoever the he is, will forgive you. Before God, you will become pure. So the Alter Rebbe explains, and all generations after that, what does it mean by Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is a day which is higher than Yud Kei Vav Kei. The name Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hashem's name, is a name of Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei, we know without elaborating on it now, Yud is Atzilus, Hey is Bria, Vav is Yetzira, Hey is Asiya, the four worlds. Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yud is Chachma, Hey is Bina, Vav is the six emotional attributes. The last Hey is Malchus. Again, the 10 attributes of God. The name Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, corresponds with the four levels of the neshama: nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya. Now, yes, last week we discussed there's a fifth level called yechida, but that level of yechida is higher than Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Kei Vav Kei is a name of Hashem that's associated with world, granted in a supernatural level. But supernatural means it's super connected to natural. Meaning, yes, Yud Kei Vav Kei is the name of Hashem, which represents the supernatural. Elokim, we learned already many times, Elokim, written out properly, equals 86, the numerical value of Hateva, the nature. Which means as follows. Or with the Rebbe, same thing the Rebbe says. Why can a Jew say Moda'ani in the morning before washing Negavaser? So the halachic answer is because there's no mention of God's name in it. So therefore it's not that holy, so you can say the name of it. The Rebbe explains according to Chassidus just the opposite. Moda'ani is so important. There is no mention of Hashem's name because the Moda'ani, the submission of the Jew to God that comes from the essence of the Jew, the Yechida, that can never become impure. And therefore, no impurity in the world can impurify it. So Moda'ani represents the essence of the Neshama. Yom Kippur, 5 davenings, 5 levels of the Neshama. And the Megillah of Purim that has no mention of Hashem's name in the Megillah, not Hashem, not Elokim, because the Megillah of Purim is above the supernatural level of Hashem. And I'll explain that very simply in a second. There is miracle and there is nature. Miracle is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Nature is the name of Elokim, like we said before. But when a miracle dresses itself into nature, where you are joining two opposites, meaning miracle is above nature, nature is nature. So how can you join nature and supernatural simultaneously? The only way that nature and supernatural could join is when you tap into a level above both. Essence. In the essence of Hashem, there is no difference between nature and miracle. There is no difference between light and dark. There's no difference between limited and unlimited. There is no difference between spiritual and physical. That level of God is above both. Therefore, God can make spiritual, he can make physical, and he can even join them together. Is Hashem only supernatural? No. Because if he's supernatural, that means he's not natural. That's how you limit thinking. If Hashem is only supernatural, how can he create nature? You can't make what you're not. So therefore, what is Hashem? We don't know, obviously. But one thing we know what he's not, meaning Hashem is not natural, Hashem is not miraculous. Hashem is above both. And therefore, Chassidus explains that a miracle that dresses itself into nature is a greater miracle than a miracle that's not in nature. Meaning, the story of Purim, which was in a natural setting, Esther's the queen, Mordechai's the advisor, the Kissinger of that time, Lahavdil. Well, you don't see Lahavdil between Jews. But it was a natural, you could take the story of Purim and say, wow, it wasn't even a miracle. Look at him. The guy loves his wife, so he killed his enemy, and that's it. And they lived happily ever after. But we all know the miracle of Purim. But what type of miracle? It's not a miracle like the crossing of the sea, that Hashem just broke nature. Water flows by nature. Hashem broke it. Now it didn't flow. It stood. Okay, that's one level of the miracle. Then he broke nature. Here, Purim is the combination of miracle and nature together, which can only come from a level which is above both. Because if you're miracle, you cannot connect to nature. And if you're nature, you can't be supernatural. So what is the level of Purim? Hashem Yudke Vavke means supernatural. Elokim means natural. What happened on Purim? What happened on Purim is that the supernatural and the natural joined together. Where did that come from? From a level above both of them together. Where else do we find that level? That's what Yom Kippur is all about. What's Yom Kippur? Yom Kippurim, 5 davenings, not the level of Yud K Vav K, which is 4 levels. Purim is Lifnei Hashem, meaning higher than Hashem. That's where a Jew reaches on Yom Kippur. 5 tefillas, you tap into Yechida Shebenefesh, the essence of the soul. What happens on Purim? Purim was a miracle above miracle and nature together. It came from the essence of Hashem. And therefore, Chassidus explains, there's no name of Hashem in the Megillah because that would lower it. That would limit that level of Elokus, that it's only a miracle rather than above both together. And that's what the connection between Purim and Yom Kippurim. And therefore, there is no mention of Hashem's name in the Megillah because the Megillah is really a higher level of godliness than Yud Kei Vav Kei is. Okay, there's a lot more you could talk about, but we're going to move on to other things. Okay, what happened on Purim? What happened? Okay, the questions, please write in later. The question is like this: what happened? There's a very interesting medrash. The medrash says, why did the Jews deserve to have the decree of Haman against them? What did they do so bad? Why were they obligated to be destroyed? So the medrash says, one-liner, they enjoyed the meal that Achashverosh had. That's all. What did they do wrong? They enjoyed the meal that Achashverosh gave them. And as the Mefarshim of the Megillah explain, Lasis Kitzain Ish Va'ish, when Achashverosh made his meal, he gave you what food you wanted. You wanted the kosher meat, you got kosher meat. You wanted Lubavitch Shechita, he gave you Chabad Shechita. You wanted Satmar Shechita, he gave you Satmar Shechita. You wanted Beis Yosef, he gave you Beis Yosef. Whatever you wanted, he gave you. The Medrash doesn't say they ate non-kosher. The Medrash says they enjoyed the meal that Achashverosh told them to go, that he invited them to go. And because of that, Haman's decree came to annihilate every single Jew, man, women, and children. Why? So the Rebbe explains the meal. Why did Achashverosh make a meal? In the third year of his kingdom, he made this big feast for 180 days. And he brought out the utensils that were captured from the first Beis HaMikdash. Because just to get the historical events clear, Chanukah happened midway through the second Beis HaMikdash. Okay? The first Beis HaMikdash stood 410 years. They went into exile for 70 years. And they knew they were going to be in exile for 70 years. And then they built the second Beis HaMikdash that lasted 220 years. Okay? Achashverosh miscalculated the 70 years. Achashverosh thought the 70 years were going to be up already. And therefore, he was off by a number of years. So in the third year of his reign, he saw that the Beis HaMikdash was not being rebuilt. So he said, good, they're under my forever. So he threw a party. And the party was to celebrate the fact that the Jews are not going to be able to go back to Eretz Yisrael to build the Beis HaMikdash. And he took out the kelim of the Beis HaMikdash. He took out the utensils of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Jews are invited to the party. And Mordechai warned the Jews, don't go. Mordechai warned the Jews, it says, not to go. You know what? You know how Jews work. You get invited to a party, it's free food, you run. The Gemara, the Medrash doesn't say they sinned because they ate treif or they desecrated Shabbos. The Medrash says they were almost destroyed. There was a decree upon them because they enjoyed a meal that Achashverosh the Rasha made. And what's the lesson? Jews do not have to follow the ways of the non-Jews. We have our own. In fact, okay, even Haman realized when he came to Achashverosh to destroy the Jews, Haman said, Yeshnai am echad. There is one nation that believes in echad in God. V'dasem sheinis mikolam, and their laws are different than everybody else. Bilam realized when he wanted to curse the Jews. Bilam Arasha said, Am levadad yishkin, the Jews live alone. the greatness of the Jews is that we don't assimilate, because this guy is making a feast to show that the Beis Hamikdash will not be rebuilt. There's no mitzvah for a Jew to run to that party. In fact, by running to the party, they cause basically a decree of destruction upon themselves. And therefore, Jews have to know we don't need to run after the Goyim. There was once a story that happened in the White House Hanukkah. I believe it was mentioned in the past. President Carter came out. They had a Hanukkah party in the White House. And I don't know which night of Hanukkah. I think maybe it's the third, fourth night of Hanukkah. And they were going to light the 4 candles in the menorah. And Carter said, the president said, I think it would look nicer if you would light all 8 candles. It would look nice if you lit all 8 candles. Not mentioning names, the shliach was lost. The president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. So he lit all 8 candles on the 4th night. The Rebbe found out about it. And by the next Fabrengen, the Rebbe was very, very sharp. Since when does a Jew feel inferior to a Goy? The Rebbe was a very intelligent, smart man. He knew this was the president of the United States. This is the Achashverosh of the world. The Moshe Bekipa, the most powerful man in the world. The Rebbe said, why is a Jew falling prey? Why is a Jew giving in to what the non-Jew wants him to do? Torah says you light 4, you don't light 8 because somebody asked you to light 8. No matter who that person is. Again, they didn't do anything halachically wrong. Halachically, they were great. They ate 100% kosher food, glatt kosher food. But you don't enjoy a meal that the guy is making to show that he destroyed the Beis Hamikdash is still being destroyed. Okay, the next thing is the Rebbe explains just a few short things going on, and then we'll talk more. When the Megillah introduces Mordechai HaTzadik, the pasuk says like this: Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan Abira. There was a Jewish man in Shushan. Ushmai Mordechai, and his name was Mordechai. Ben Yoel, Ben Shimi, Ben Kish, the son of Yoel, the son of Shimi, the son of Kish. Ish Shemini, from the tribe of Binyamin. And the Rebbe said, look at the wording of the Megillah. It's a very interesting wording. Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan Abira. Shushan Abira was the capital of the most powerful country at that time. Not only that, the Mefarshim explain, sometimes you have in the Megillah the word Shushan, and sometimes you have the word Shushan Abira. And the Mefarshim explain, it was the city Shushan, and then in the city, the capital area, where Achashverosh's kingdom, palace, and everything was, that was called Shushan Abira. So there was the city of Shushan, and then there was the capital district called Shushan Abira, the capital Shushan. And the Rebbe said, you see what you learned from here? There's a guy walking in the street in Shushan. You don't even know who he is. But you know what? You see right away he's dressed like a Jew. Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan Abira. The first thing you see about the guy, he's a Jew. He's walking in the street like a Jew. Then you find out, what's his name? His name is Mordechai. But what's the first most important thing? Mordechai walked around looking like a Jew. He didn't assimilate with everybody else. You looked at him, you saw right away he was a Jew. And by the way, then everybody had beards. All the men at least had beards. But you were able to tell this is Mordechai. What did Mordechai do? The Megillah says. What bothered Haman? Lo yichra v'lo yishtachva. Whatever it says. Lo yichra means he didn't kneel. Lo yishtachva, and he didn't bow. Bowing is when you go down flat. Okay? Kneel, when you bend your knees, you're kneeling. You go down a little bit. What did Haman notice in Mordechai? What's very important for every one of us to understand. When it comes to Yiddishkeit, not only can you not bow to Goyishkeit, you can't even kneel. You can't even bend a little bit down. When it comes to a Jew with Yiddishkeit, you can't give in any amount, one iota. Because once you have a wall and there's a crack in the wall, a tiny crack, it doesn't stay that way. The crack keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until the whole wall falls down. The Megillah is teaching us in this, just in this one aspect of Mordechai, who he was, a Jew walking in the street. You have to see right away, this is Ish Yehudi Hoya. You don't even know who he is. Then you find out who he is. And who is this Mordechai guy? Lo yichra v'lo yishtachava. Not only did he not bow to Haman, no, Haman represents Goyishkeit, Goyish concepts, contrary to Torah concepts, but lo yichra, he didn't give in anything. Once you give a finger, you lose your hand. And that's a very important practical lesson, very short, but very practical from the Megillah. There's another interesting point. When Haman came to Achashverosh, just a factual point, and he wanted to tell Achashverosh to destroy the Jews, and he says to Achashverosh, Aseres halafim kikar kesef, I'll give you 10,000 talents of gold, of silver. And Achashverosh said to him, nah, keep the money. You can do whatever you want, just keep the money. I don't need your money. According to the calculations, what Haman offered Achashverosh, listen to this, 750 tons of silver. 750 tons, not pounds, tons. I mean, 750 times 2,000 is how much ounces, how many ounces he offered Achashverosh to destroy the Jews. And Achashverosh said, you know, keep the money, I don't need it. Which shows the vast wealth that they had at that time, okay, which was unbelievable. Another interesting thing Chassidus explains, at the beginning of the 6th perek of the Megillah, it says, Balayla hu nodadosh nas hamelech. That night, which happened to be the night of Purim, of Pesach, the king's sleep was disturbed. The king's sleep was disturbed. We know, Chazal tell us, that when it says Hamelech, it means Hashem. Like we said before, Hashem's name is alluded to a lot in the Megillah. When it says Hamelech, it refers to Hashem. So the Megillah basically is saying that night, when Esther told Mordechai, gather all the Jews and fast the 3 days, and that whole story over there. So the king's sleep was disturbed. And the Medrash says, which king's sleep was disturbed? Not only Achashverosh, Malkei Shel Elam, God's sleep. Hashem's sleep became disturbed. So everybody asks the question. We say in davening every Shabbos in Tilim, Hine lo yonum v'lo yishon shomer Yisrael. God doesn't slumber and he doesn't sleep. So if you're telling me that God doesn't sleep, how could the sleep of Hashem be disturbed the night when the action started? Okay? So Chassidus explains the following. Of course, God doesn't sleep. But there is a concept by Hashem of sleeping, which means like this. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, when everything, the Kedusha of God was revealed in the world, everything was functioning properly, then Hashem is, so to speak, up. What's the difference between a person sleeping and a person who's up? When you sleep, all your faculties are functioning. You're breathing. You hear. You see. You hear dreams. You see dreams. It's functioning. What's the difference, though, when a person sleeps or is up? When a person sleeps, the faculties, yes, they're working, but they're not functioning properly. For instance, in a dream, you can see a dream, crazy things that you would never think about when you're up. It's mamish crazy things. When a person sleeps, they talk in their sleep foolish things. They do things which are not normal. So what's the difference by a person? Because then we can understand the way it is by Hashem. When a person functions properly, then he's up, he's awake. When he doesn't function properly, he's sleeping. Therefore, there's a din in Shulchan Aruch, in the Halachas of Rosh Hashanah, Hayeshiv Botol Kiyoshin Dabi. A guy who's sitting doing nothing is like sleeping. He's not functioning. So now when you use the word up, awake, and sleep by Hashem, what does that mean? In the time of Beis Hamikdash, in the time of revelation of godliness, everything functions properly. Top is top, bottom is bottom. The Jews are on top. The other people are the Jews, because then they're doing Torah mitzvahs, they're functioning. Then Hashem is, so to speak, functioning properly, that what deserves to be up is up, what deserves to be down is down, and that's the way it is. What happens, Kaviyachol, when Hashem goes to sleep? What does that mean in a spiritual sense? It's not functioning anymore. The wicked people are on top, the good people are at the bottom. Things that shouldn't be happening. COVID is crazy things are going on. That's called in Chassidus sleeping. So therefore, Chassidus uses the term that in Golus, it's the level of Shina, Kaviyachol. Kaviyachol, Hashem is sleeping. Because who's supposed to be on top is not, the wicked are prosperous, and everything else of the mishmash. During the Gzeir of Haman, because the Jews had enough and that benefited from the meal of Achashverosh, Kaviyachol Hashem slept. Meaning, Haman became on top. Evil dominated. Achashverosh was powerful. When the Jews woke up and they started doing tshuva, they started having Mesiras Nefesh. Then they made Kaviyachol that Hashem woke up. What does it mean Hashem woke up? Things started getting back to normal. The miracle happened. Esther came to Achashverosh. She asked him to come to the party. He didn't kill her for coming like Esther was afraid of. And the whole miracle started taking place. Hashem Kaviyachol, Nada Dashnas HaMelech. It means Kaviyachol, Hashem sleep, became disturbed. Golus started waking up. And that's when the miracle of Purim started. Therefore, it says in Halacha that when the Balkai reads the beginning, Balaylo Nada Dashnas HaMelech, at the beginning of the 6th chapter, he's supposed to raise his voice, because that's when the beginning of the miracle happened. The beginning of the miracle is Kaviyachol, Hashem stopping to sleep, Hashem waking up. What caused Hashem to wake up? So again, the Medrash says, and Chassidus explains it beautifully, that the Jews stood for Mesiras Nefesh, called Hashana Kula. a whole year. The decree of Haman came out in Nisan. Therefore, the 3 days was in Nisan. In fact, he fasted Pesach that year. But Yahweh Mordechai made the Jews fast Pesach that year. When was the decree set for? The following Adar, 12 months later. That means the decree was hanging over the Jews' head for a complete year. And the Megillah says the Jews stood b'mesiras nefesh kol hashana kula. The whole year, the Jews stood with self-sacrifice. What is the emphasis of a whole year? We mentioned Monday night that there's, sometimes you have mesiras nefesh in this country, not in this country, in this day, yeah, in this day, not. It's explained based on Psukim and Chumash that the year has 4 seasons. Okay? In Parshas Nech, the pasuk says the year has 4 seasons. Basically, it's summer, winter, fall, and spring. And Chassidus explains the Aved of the winter is not the Aved of the summer. The Aved of the spring is not the Aved of the fall. There's 4 distinct ways of serving Hashem. There's the winter service, the summer service, the fall service, the spring service. Okay? Now, what does it mean the Jews stood b'mesiras nefesh kol hashana? It means that the entire year, through every possible situation, every possible way of serving Hashem, the Jews stood with real mesiras nefesh, not partial mesiras nefesh, sometime mesiras nefesh. No, constant mesiras nefesh under every single occasion that happened, the Jews stood with self-sacrifice. And that's why that night when the Jews started waking up to have mesiras nefesh, Hashem sleep. Again, sleeping means Hashem goes into hiding. Hashem goes into Golus. What happened? The Jews woke up, and therefore they Kaviyachal woke up Hashem to start acting towards the miracle. And that's where we got the miracle of Purim. Okay, another interesting thing. By the way, just to come back to what I should have mentioned before. One of the obligations of Purim, don't do this at home like they say, is a person should get drunk, not to know the difference between ordered Haman and Baruch Mordechai. The difference between cursed is Haman, blessed is Mordechai. Halacha says the numerical value is the same, that you can't figure it out. But again, why is Purim the concept of lo yada, of not knowing? Because that's what the concept of a lottery is. When you cast lots, you win the lottery. There is absolutely no logic why you win. The definition of casting lots is you're leaving it up to chance, basically, or Hashem. It's not something you understand. And again, Yom Kippur cast lots because Yom Kippur is Lifnei Hashem, higher than Yud Kippur, above understanding. Purim, what is Purim? Casting lots? Again, above logic, above understanding. These are all the similarities between Purim and Yom Kippur. And that's why, to continue along the same lines, that's why the Megillah is called Esther. It's not even called Esther and Mordechai. Call it Esther. Give the guy credit. Okay, only Esther. Give Mordechai a little credit. He was pretty involved in this, heavy duty. He had mesiras nefesh. He woke up the Jews. Why is it called Megillah Esther and Mordechai? Simply the reason, Chazal tell us, why was it called Esther? Because when they wrote the book of Megillah Esther, the Chachamim did not want to make it one of the 24 books of scriptures. They said, we're not making it one of the 24 books of scriptures. And Esther begged them. The Gemara says, Esther said to the Chachamim, She said, Kisvuni Ladaitis, I want this to be written for all generations. And they gave them to her. But why is Esther still only called Esther? And here, we're going to start a new thing. The Gemara asks in Megillah, everything we find in Torah. Okay? So, for instance, the Gemara in Megillah asks, Mordechai min hatera minayin. Where do we find a hint to Mordechai in the Chumash? And the Gemara answers at the beginning of Parshas Kisisa, one of the spices, it says Mordoror, and Targum says Morodachya. The spice Mordoror is Targum Uncle says Morodachya, which is Mordechai. That's where we find Mordechai in the Torah. Then the Gemara says, where do we find Esther in the Torah? So the Gemara answers a strange answer, but this is where we find Esther in the Torah. Anechi hastir panai mikem bayemahu. The pasuk says, when the Jews will sin, I will conceal. Anechi hastir panai mikem. I'm going to double conceal. Not only will I hide, Hashem says, I will make it a double covering by Yemahu in that day. What does this have to do with Esther? Megillah. Concealment, it's a miracle. What is the concealment? So there's another very interesting Chazal. Chazal say like this. When Mashiach comes, all the Yom Tevim are going to become nullified, chutz Purim. All the holidays are going to be nullified except Purim and halachis. But we're going to leave that out now. Why? First of all, there's a two question over here. Number one, what's Purim unique over all the other holidays? Why is that special? Secondly, Torah is eternal. What do you mean Mashiach comes, there's not going to be Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot? Of course there's going to be. Torah is permanent. Torah is eternal. What does it mean? Kol hayamim tevim asidim libatel chutz mipurim. Why? There's definitely going to be a Pesach. There's definitely going to be a Shavuos, a Sukkot, a Tu B'Shvat. Of course there's going to be. So what does it mean? The Chazal don't say that the Yom Tevim won't exist. The Chachamim say they're going to be bottled. They're going to be nullified. What does that mean? Shabbos Yom Tiv are holy days. What does it mean, the holy days? There's a greater level of Kedusha revealed on those days. I mean, that's what makes Shabbos holier, Yom Tiv holier. There's a greater revelation of godliness on those days. When Mashiach comes, I'm saying this in a nutshell because it's late. When Mashiach comes, the revelation of Mashiach is so great, you won't feel the Kedusha of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. The analogy of this is when the sun is shining outside and you light a candle outside, the candle is burning, but it's basically it's non-existent compared to the super great revelation of the sun. The light of the sun is basically drowning it out. Doesn't mean there's no candle. The candle is there, but you don't feel it. That's what the Chazal say. When Mashiach comes, the Kedusha of Mashiach is going to be so great. The revelation of godliness in the world is going to be so great. It means that when all the Chagim, the Kedusha of the Chagim are going to be bottled, it's not going to stand out. Purim, on the other hand, is so great that even when Mashiach comes, it's going to be like a big, big fire, big light burning. That even when Mashiach comes, you're going to see the Yom Tov of Purim. Why is that? Like we mentioned before, what is Purim? Purim is the level of concealment. Concealment, asted, panai, double concealment, doesn't mean, God forbid, he's not there. It means he's there. The name of Hashem is not open in the Megillah. It's there, but it's not revealed because it's a greater level of godliness than it was when it was a Beis Hamikdash. When the godliness is revealed through the Mesiras Nefesh of the Jews. Mesiras Nefesh is above and beyond the letter of the law. When the Jews had Mesiras Nefesh in Purim, they caused a revelation of Kedusha on Purim, that even the revelation that will happen when Mashiach comes will not drown it out. And that comes to the ultimate level of concealment. It's so concealed, it can't be revealed. It's too great to be revealed at the present. And therefore Hashem is concealed. Sometimes concealment is, it's very low. Sometimes concealment is just the opposite. When you look at it from a positive perspective, it means that the Kedusha is so great, it's blinding, you can't see it. It's too great. And that's what Megillas Esther. Megillah comes to the word Gilui, revealing. Esther is concealment. What is Megillas Esther? What is the Yom Tov of Purim all about? Revealing the concealed level of godliness that normally is too great to be revealed, and now it becomes revealed. And that's what the uniqueness of Megillas Esther is. That's the uniqueness of the Yom Tov of Purim. It's above and beyond all the other Chagim. And therefore, the Rebbe brings down in our Minhagim that the Simcha of Purim was greater Simcha than of the Chagim of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. The Rebbe writes in Minhagim that the Simcha of Purim is a greater Simcha. Why? Because Purim reveals a greater level of godliness than the miracle of Pesach, the miracle of Shavuos, Matan Torah, the miracle of Sukkot. It's a totally different level. So anyway, everybody should have a beautiful Halacha Purim, especially based on the situation we have today. You can't have all these gatherings. Amir Hashem, Monday night will be a Parsha class. Next Wednesday, you can publicize this if you want. We're going to start 3 weeks in a row. Wednesday, the Dinam of Pesach, especially this year. It's a number of things which are different because Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos, so a lot of things change from the normal cycle. So Mitzvah Shem next week, Wednesday, 8 o'clock will be a class for men and women on the laws of Pesach.
Only for Rabbi, do we say Tachanun? When do we start? When don't say Tachanun, right?
When?
From tomorrow, from tonight?
No, tomorrow afternoon there's no Tachanun, no Avinu Malkeinu. Purim is Tachanun, Shabbos there's no Tachanun. Then afterwards you go back to Tachanun until Nisan. The entire month of Nisan there's no Tachanun.
Oh, I see. Oh, wow.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Great week.
Thank you.
Hopefully,
Thank you, Rabbi.
Purim Sameach.
And
Halacha Purim.
Purim.
Hi, Dorothy.